I had always known that my family dynamics were a little off. But what happened recently took the strange tension to a whole new level. My parents made an unexpected request. They wanted me to cancel my engagement party. Why? So they could throw a celebration for my younger brother's graduation. It was one of those moments where the absurdity hit me like a ton of bricks. And the worst part? They insisted I do this, no questions asked. I'm 28, my brother Leon is 26. We've always been on different wavelengths, but this was next level. You see, Leon just graduated from community college, a significant achievement, no doubt, but a far cry from my 10-year relationship with Nina, my high school sweetheart, who I just proposed to 2 weeks ago. The timing of everything was perfect. We were hosting a party at our house to celebrate our engagement. It was our moment. The party had been planned for weeks, and invitations were already sent out when my parents called me. They wanted me to cancel my celebration. They said they decided, without telling me, mind you, that my brother deserved a party for his graduation on the very same day. And guess what? They hadn't even sent out their invites yet. The nerve of it! They were pushing me to step aside for him, to allow the family event to take precedence. I tried to keep my calm, but honestly, I couldn't make sense of it. Why was I being asked to sacrifice something so important? I had no idea what I had done wrong. And when I refused to cancel my event, the situation escalated. My parents said one of us had to give up their celebration, but I wasn't budging. Their reaction only revealed how disconnected we had become over the years. My family's never been close. We get along, kind of, but not in the way a family should. We talk on rare occasions, exchanging pleasantries, but there's a distance. My relationship with Leon? Well, that's a whole different story. We've never gotten along. Sure, we've had moments of politeness, but they've always been overshadowed by years of rivalry. Growing up, Leon was always the golden child. It wasn't subtle. I remember my 5th birthday, a quiet affair, just close family and a few friends. Nothing special. But when Leon turned 5, my parents went all out, hiring a venue, organizing a theme party. That was just the start. Every milestone in Leon's life was celebrated like it was a national holiday, while I was lucky to get a well done for my achievements. Graduating middle school? Just a pat on the back. High school? Again, a few encouraging words. Meanwhile, Leon? His every move was worthy of a grand celebration. So when I graduated high school, I left. Not because I didn't love them, but because I couldn't take the favoritism any longer. College was my escape. I stayed distant, but still maintained civility, because, let's face it, they were paying my tuition. But as soon as I could, I stepped away. Then there was Leon. He was spoiled, entitled, and honestly, a bit of a brat. And somehow, he always got a free pass. I could never understand it. He nearly got expelled in high school, and when he dropped out of college to join a startup with some friends, selling graphic tees, my parents didn't bat an eye. The business flopped, of course, and they just brushed it off. When he eventually decided to go back to school, his grades were poor, so he ended up in community college. And now, here we were, my brother's graduation, his moment, and my engagement day, both happening at the same time. And they wanted me to give up mine. I'll admit, it felt like the final straw. If I had to cancel my engagement party for this, I was done. I wasn't heartless. I wasn't trying to undermine Leon. But let's be real. Getting engaged to the love of my life, after 10 years together, was a bigger deal to me than his community college graduation. I made it clear to my parents that I wouldn't be changing my plans. If they wanted to, they could postpone their event, since they hadn't even sent out invitations yet. To me, it was a simple, reasonable request. But, predictably, they didn't take it well. Leon, too, wasn't happy with my decision. He's always had this spoiled air about him, and now it was coming through stronger than ever. My parents, too, acting like I was the villain in this story, said I was being selfish. They claimed I was intentionally trying to overshadow Leon's accomplishment. I tried to reason with them, but it was useless. Finally, I snapped. I told them they could go ahead with their party, but I wasn't changing mine. And with that, I ended the call. I blocked them. For days, I didn't hear a word. But word spread quickly. My relatives found out about the clash, and they were caught in the middle. They were all invited to both events, and the confusion was palpable. I didn't want to involve them, so I kept my distance. I told them it was their choice, no hard feelings, but deep down, I knew it would hurt if fewer people showed up for my party. 3 days later, things took a turn. My cousin revealed to me that my parents were bad-mouthing me. They were spreading lies, saying I'd purposefully chosen the same date to sabotage Leon's celebration. They were trying to make me look bad, accusing me of blindsiding them. But here's the thing, I didn't need to fabricate stories to make them look worse. I simply told the truth. And the truth was enough. I sent a message to everyone invited to my party, hoping to set the record straight. I knew my parents were probably spreading a twisted version of things, so I took it upon myself to share my side of the story. I explained what had been said in the phone call we had just the other day. I let everyone know that growing up, it was always Lion who got the praise, no matter what. And I had been okay with it until now. I told them how unfair it was for my parents to expect me to push my own milestones aside just to cater to Lion, their golden child. I made it clear, if anyone still chose to believe their version of events over mine, that was their decision. But I expected them to respect my boundaries and not bother reaching out to me again if that was the case. The message was blunt, unambiguous, and a little nerve-wracking, but I was ready for whatever came next. To my surprise, the response wasn't what I feared. Most of my relatives replied, saying they understood my perspective and were on my side. Many of them had witnessed firsthand how poorly I had been treated by my parents, all throughout my childhood. My cousins and younger uncles and aunts even reassured me that they would be at my engagement celebration. Na and I exchanged relieved smiles as most of the invites were quickly RSVP'd. The night of the party came, and it was a blast. I was thrilled to see that nearly everyone who had been invited showed up. There was no hesitation, no dilemma, people saw through the lies. They told me that when they got the messages from my parents, they could already tell something was off. They refused to believe I would intentionally overshadow Lion's event, something I would never do. It was a weight off my chest knowing that people had my back. Many even said they admired how I stood firm and didn't give in to my parents' demands. For once, I was being seen for who I truly was, and it felt empowering. The night went on, and not only did I get to celebrate my engagement, but I also learned that most of my family was finally in sync with me when it came to my parents' treatment. The party was a resounding success, and I couldn't be happier. But the next morning, that joy quickly turned into dread. The doorbell rang, and I already knew who it was. My parents. Lion. I had no intention of letting them in. I shouted for them to leave, but my dad insisted they needed to talk. They weren't going anywhere until they had their say. For a moment, I thought about calling the cops, but Nina persuaded me to just hear them out, end this once and for all. Reluctantly, I opened the door. The second they walked in, the accusations started flying. I had barely even had a chance to wake up, but there they were, shouting at me. They claimed I was insanely jealous of Lion, that I did this just to steal his spotlight. They went on and on about how their party had been a bust, barely anyone showed up, and those who did left quickly to attend my celebration. They knew about the message I'd sent to the family, and I defended myself, explaining that I hadn't wanted to do this, but they had forced my hand by lying and bad-mouthing me. It was clear, though, that they weren't listening. They drowned me out with more accusations. According to them, I was breaking the family apart, all out of jealousy. After a while, Na seemed to realize it was pointless to try to reason with them. They weren't going to have a civilized discussion. She stepped in and threatened to call the police if they didn't leave immediately. Finally, they left, but not without slinging more insults my way. As Lion slammed the door so violently behind him that the windows rattled, I was tempted to call him back and let him have it. But I stayed quiet. It wasn't worth it. Na and I were seething, but the storm wasn't over. Just when we thought it was, we received an unexpected message from an unknown number. It was probably someone using a friend's phone because we blocked all of them. The message said that no matter what, we were still family. They were disappointed in me for having my engagement party on the same day as Lion's. They claimed that was the one thing I could have let him have, that he was already dealing with the embarrassment of graduating college at 26 and the failure of his business. They said they were just trying to lift his spirits and that I had never even considered his feelings. They expressed their disappointment, saying I should have been more mature. They apologized for trying to ruin my reputation but justified it by saying they were doing it to ensure Lion's party was a success. Since receiving that message, I've been in a state of confusion. Part of me knows it's just more manipulation. But another part wonders, what if they're actually sorry? Na's feeling conflicted too. So, we're stuck, unsure what to make of all of this. And now I'm left wondering, AITA for having my engagement party on the same day as Lion's graduation? I didn't care much for the pedestal they placed my brother on, nor did I mind their indifference toward me, so long as everything was paid for. What did it matter? I was content with the rest of my family, and I didn't feel the need to force anyone to pick sides. I had only told them that if they chose not to attend my party, that would be the line we couldn't cross. Surprisingly, they all showed up. And honestly, I no longer cared whether they stayed on good terms with my parents or my brother. I'd made my peace with it. Many of you wondered why I bothered keeping in touch with my extended family, given the way things had played out. It's simple, this was between my parents, my brother, and me. It wasn't for them to get dragged into, and I didn't want to make it that complicated. Days passed, and I started reading through the comments on my post. I realized there was no need for any apology. I'd blocked my parents, I'd blocked the number they'd used to message me, and I told them I didn't want anything to do with them anymore. It felt like a weight had been lifted. 3 days passed in silence. But today, things took a turn. Just as Nina and I were about to leave for work, my mother showed up. Alone. No father, no brother. She was quieter than them, more composed, so I figured maybe we could finally have a calm conversation, something that wasn't a shouting match. I let her in. She said she wanted to talk to both of us. So Nina joined us, and we sat down. My mother began, her tone almost sorrowful. She said she regretted everything that had happened recently and that she wanted to apologize on behalf of all three of them. My first thought? That apology felt hollow. If they really wanted to apologize, shouldn't they all have shown up? Just sending my mom wasn't enough. But I kept that thought to myself. Then she went on. Even though she recognized they had messed up, she said she still felt hurt by something that had happened during their last visit. She said she respected that we'd been together for 10 years, that Nina was like a daughter to her. But, apparently, she had a problem with Nina threatening to call the police on my dad. She insisted that we owed them an apology because, no matter what had happened, they were still family, and Nina wasn't family yet, in her eyes. It took a moment for everything to sink in. My mother was accusing Nina of being disrespectful for shouting at my father and demanding he leave our house. And she was putting some of the blame on me for allowing it. For just standing there, silently. I felt my blood boil. I snapped. I told my mom that while I appreciated the gesture of her showing up to apologize, it was unnecessary. I had hoped that, since it was just her this time, there might be some understanding, some attempt at making things right. But no! They couldn't let go of their egos. I looked her straight in the eye and told her that she had wasted half an hour of our time. I didn't need to hear her lecture on morals. I defended Nina. She was well within her rights to speak her mind, especially after my parents showed up uninvited. We had opened the door, thinking we could finally have a real conversation, a chance to clear the air. Instead, they stormed in, accusing me of all kinds of things and yelling at us. I wasn't about to apologize for anything. And as for Nina, she was my family now. She meant more to me than anyone in that room. Certainly more than them. I told my mother we were done. She needed to leave. But she didn't get up. She was digging in, refusing to leave without a fight. Frustration swelled within me. I told her, bluntly, that I didn't care what kind of behavior she was going to accept from me. I didn't want to interact with them anymore. I distanced myself from them after college, and after everything that had happened, I was done. I told her if she didn't like my behavior, that was her choice, but I didn't need her in my life anymore. The same went for my father and brother. We argued for a while, and in the end, she told me. S stepped inside, they started spewing their usual nonsense. The pity party began. They lamented about how they couldn't understand where they went wrong raising me. They had no idea why I had turned out the way I did. But Leon, oh, Leon, he was the golden child, the perfect son, living with them so he wouldn't abandon them in their old age. Sure, that's the story they told. The real reason? He didn't have the financial freedom to live on his own, and they allowed him to live rent-free, not expecting him to contribute a dime. But that wasn't mentioned, of course. For a few minutes, they went on and on, talking about how perfect Leon was and how I was nothing but a massive disappointment. By this point, Nina's parents were starting to put two and two together. They could tell my parents were probably a little tipsy. The conversation shifted to Nina and the outrage over the last time she had dared to raise her voice at them. Apparently, her behavior during their last visit had been so shocking, screaming, threatening to call the cops on my father, that they couldn't wrap their heads around it. She had always been this shy, quiet girl, but now, with a ring on her finger, she turned into someone else entirely. And that was the tipping point. It was the moment they came up with their brilliant plan. They were going to get us to apologize. No, not just us, they'd involve Nina's parents in the drama, too. The plan was to convince them not to pay for our wedding, leaving us with no other option but to beg for forgiveness. Can you even believe it? They thought this would work. Dragging Nina's family into this, why? Because they were normal, unlike my parents. My future in-laws knew exactly what kind of people my parents were, and they weren't about to let them walk all over us. After my parents left, Nina's parents called to fill us in on the absurdity. They knew better than to take offense at my parents' ridiculous antics, and they reassured us that it wasn't our fault. The next time my parents showed up, they just refused to let them in. For once, something went right. But I couldn't let this go. Just in case my parents got any crazy ideas, I unblocked them and sent a message. If they even thought about bothering anyone in the family again, I'd take legal action. They might not take me seriously, but the mere mention of it would probably send them scurrying. That was my plan for now, and I hoped it worked. Let's see if they tried anything else. Fast forward close to a year. A whole year without hearing from my parents or my brother, and you know what? Best year of my life. No drama, no guilt, just peace. And 2 months ago, Nina and I finally got married. It was everything we hoped for, surrounded by the people who truly mattered to us. My parents didn't even bother to wish us well, and part of me was relieved. Can you imagine having to interact with them right now? I was living my dream, married to the love of my life. And as long as Nina's by my side, nothing else really matters.